Donna, tell us about this initiative in which you are working.
Okay, a little context. About a year ago, the National League declared a constitutional crisis. And the reason they did that was because it had been 87 days since Kilmer Abrego Garcia had been sent to Seacoast Prison in El Salvador, and the Supreme Court had requested of the executive branch that they return him to this country, and that had not happened. There had been unconstitutional actions by the administration prior to that event, and of course, many times subsequently. So the League determined that they needed to put another initiative in place to activate voters in ways that we haven't necessarily done before. The 8.5 comes from, there's a lot of historical research. There's a number of researchers that have done research over the past 100 years, looking at how governments move from democratic to authoritarian. And what they found was that if you can engage 3.5% of your adult population in nonviolent resistance, then you have a very good chance of your country not becoming authoritarian. And 3.5% in our country means 8.5 million voters. So that's where the 8.5 comes from. So the League's initiative was to get people accelerate our work in terms of helping people register to vote, getting out the vote, but also to encourage involvement in other areas such as protests, to increase the engagement of citizens with their legislators, to make phone calls, to write, to let our legislators know what we want as citizens and frankly as their bosses, and also to engage in general boycotts and a lot of other activities.
What is the context for these initiatives? Is this national? Is this concern particularly different in Wisconsin?
I don't think it's particularly different in Wisconsin, but there are many things that are happening nationwide in terms of challenges to women's right to vote. And there's an initiative going on right now, a federal legislation that's called the SAVE Act. That legislation would require that anybody who registers to vote be able to demonstrate that they're a citizen of this country. And the stated reason for the legislation is to prevent undocumented people from voting, which is vanishingly rare. The real reason for this legislation is to prevent people from voting. It's a voter suppression bill. What it requires is that people bring a document that would be a birth certificate, a passport, naturalization papers. The research shows that only 10% of adults do not have these papers readily available. That affects heavily people of color and also people who are poor, who move a lot. They tend to lose their papers. And it also heavily affects women who have changed their names and whose names then don't match what's on their birth certificate. If they don't have a passport, it's going to be difficult for them to vote. So the League, we're asking people to contact their senators, contact Senator Ron Johnson, contact Senator Tammy Baldwin, and ask them to vote against the SAVE Act. It's not necessary, and it will make it hard for people to vote.
What would you tell to those who support the SAVE Act?
What I would say is that even some of the most conservative organizations, such as the Heritage Foundation, that have looked into the issue of undocumented immigrants, have found that it is so small. And what I would also say, as a poll worker and as a taxpayer, that I see what goes into administering elections. And as a taxpayer, it's hard for me to think, why would I justify having to change all those procedures, all of that software, all of the voter rolls and things like that in order to be able to account for people's citizenship when it's not necessary.
How are things going regarding probably these grassroots efforts that your initiative may be facing?
When the League National and the League Milwaukee started it, it was around summer of last year. And the response nationwide and in our own general community has been very positive. Many people who are concerned about our democracy and about our Constitution and want to become involved. Sometimes they need direction. They say, what can I do? And if you give them instances of things that they can do, usually move ahead and actually do something.
What is your reaction? Because you are mentioning who are the most vulnerable in front of these laws that are moving so fast in the legislative system, while people are still not being able to grasp the consequences of these bills.
I think a lot of people are under the belief that a slide into autocracy cannot happen here, and that's simply not true. It can happen just about anywhere. And there's been plenty happening in our country that has led us down this path already. There have been so many actions that have been unconstitutional, and there are a lot of people fighting them in the courts, but the court processes typically take a while. And then in the meantime, things happen. The country keeps moving along. In terms of, I guess, waking people up to the knowledge that it's important to do something, there's 100 years of historical evidence that we, the people, can make a difference. And that we can make a difference by using our voice, by using the rights that we've been given in the Constitution to peacefully protest, to contact our legislators, to show up for things like May Day, where we will be joining with the immigrant community to stand side by side and say, you are neighbors. As a resident of this country, enjoy certain rights, and we're going to stand up alongside you for those rights.
Some research by the Pew Research Center and other important research centers are bringing numbers that state that these voters who supported this administration are not happy anymore. What do you see? What is the future of this movement?
Well, I think it takes many types of actions to get the attention of the government and of the people who support them, including the businesses that support them. One action is boycotts. And because we vote with our pocketbooks in, and we say to these corporations, so you are supporting a government that is engaging in actions that we are not in support of, and we are going to withdraw our financial resources until something changes, or for periods of time to make a statement, like, for example, the Cyber Monday and the Black Friday boycotts. Those are big shopping days. So if people make sustained commitment to not shopping on those days, that makes a statement. And it certainly did make a statement when Jimmy Kimmel was off air and he was brought on air because so many people removed their subscriptions from various services that covered his show. And May Day on May 1st is another opportunity because one day of sustained amount of people not spending money makes a statement.